The following podcast is part of the MindBodySpirit.fm podcast network.
This episode is brought to you by Walmart. New beauty is in bloom at Walmart, and it's all about springtime radiance. From Drybar, Tula Skincare, and hundreds more available online, Walmart has the premium brands you want and this season's on-trend products for flawless, glossy hair and hydrated skin. Big name beauty brands? Check. The things you love? Check. Find trending spring beauty and all you need to look and feel gorgeous at Walmart, on app and online.
Every cup of Nespresso coffee is an invitation to transform your morning routine into a ritual you can treasure each and every day. Using the Virtuo Pup, a simple touch of the button freshly brews bold aromas and a rich, velvety crema layer for delicious cafe-quality coffee at home. Whether you enjoy your coffee hot or over ice, every sip, every morning is unforgettable. Nothing tastes like Nespresso coffee. Visit Nespresso.com or our app to explore our full range of easy-to-use machines and coffees not found anywhere else.
Wholeness means to me being in a state of joy.
Wholeness means feeling complete, owning my authentic gifts.
Wholeness is really connected. Everything is connected to everything.
Wholeness is where we have access to all parts of ourselves.
This is interesting because they all have to do with like an animal and a herb or a plant or something like that.
Cool.
So the card for today is the antelope and the wheat. And antelope are associated with community, traveling in large herds, they work together. And wheat is an ancient symbol of prosperity, real easy to grow, store, and convert to flour. And the antelope and wheat call us to nourish ourselves and our communities. So I'm going to use that as a call to anyone who feels like they have been called to nurture their community to reach out to us, because we want you. We want your expertise. You have a message. I think everyone has a message to share. And if you're feeling called to make it and you don't really know where to start, we would love to help you with that.
Yep. Yes. Yeah. Thank you that's great. And that was a really pretty piece of art on there. I mean, that wheat was gorgeous.
Yeah.
So, yeah. You'll have to go to the library to see the video if you're just listening to this, but worth it, right? Worth it. You get all the videos of our podcast. You get 400 plus videos of other things. You get our live online group classes. Like, it's a deal. It's a deal.
Yes. We want to see you there.
We want to see you there. So woo-woo of the creative act, which I think we were saying, like, the entire book is very woo-woo,
It's woo. All of it.
Yeah. I remember when my husband got the book and he's like, do you care if we listen to this book? And I was like, all right. And we were running to this, like a store for, what were we getting? Oh, we were getting stuff. It was in July. We were getting stuff for my son's wedding, and we needed to she wanted to have all these different a soda bar. So we had to run to this restaurant supply store to grab something. And so we started on our way there. So again, I remember right where I was as we're listening to this stuff. And it's just funny because within, 20 minutes of this starting the book, I just was like, this feeds my soul. Like this, These words just feed my soul. And, it's interesting. I was on a call with Darlene Green, one of our experts, and she says, it's hard because it doesn't come in from the head. She's like, I don't know where it comes in from, but stuff comes in. And that's how it was with this. Like, it wasn't like it was titillating my brain. It was like my body was in resonance with it, honestly. And that's very woo, but it's true,
It's interesting that you say that, because I think it was harder for me because I probably operate more in my left brain. And I was like trying to find a pattern or some sort of like, what outline, that would follow. And it doesn't. Like, it's just kind of ideas, and that's pretty woo. I like it, but I would say it is a little bit difficult for me. So if it is difficult for you too.
Yeah, it wasn't he doesn't tell stories.
No,
very often.
Well, he does have a few.
Just a few, but it wasn't it's not very much stories. Yeah, they're mostly just like sermons almost, I feel like.
And I really wanted to know some of the people he was talking about and some of their songs. Like when he would talk about music and some of the stuff that they would do, I'm like, oh, I wish I knew who that was.
Oh, I looked that up at one point. He has worked with so many artists. In fact, let me look. I'm gonna ask. One of the first ones he did was Run DMC, the Beastie Boys, LL Cool J, Public Enemy, Jay-Z, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Linkin Park, Metallica, Rage Against the Machine,
My gosh.
Adele, Ed Sheeran, Lana Del Rey, Johnny Cash, The Chicks, Weezer, Smashing Pumpkins, The Strokes.
Huh.
Those are some of the people he's worked with. And
Okay,
I'm
those are all
telling
over the place. Wow,
all
because
over the place.
when you're first reading them, I'm like, don't listen, don't listen, don't listen. I mean, I think I did listen to some Beastie
Metallica.
Boys
Yeah.
in high school, but yeah, moving on, I'm like Adele and Run DMC. Those are very
Right.
different.
Right. And I mean, when I learned that, it was kind of like, so he really was attuned to the artist,
Yeah.
not to, to help them create their art. He wasn't trying to, it wasn't his own sound, that he was ever trying to create. And in the book, the ways he would just say, let's stop, to the artist, let's just stop and figure out this. And I think, wouldn't it be to have somebody walk through your creation with you and just really make sure it was authentic to you and that you were in this creative process and not just in this result process, this is about the creating. This isn't just the creation, oh, that just sings to me, totally sings
How
to
could
me.
I'm even thinking about that from like a parent point of view, because I was thinking, yeah, who in your life would be able to do that for you? And I think as a parent, that really is,
Yeah.
that could be one of your core goals, is instead of wanting your kid to be like you
Yeah.
or follow the rules like you're really trying to show them of like, how do you want to show up? Pause.
Totally. Right.
For a
Right.
minute. Like, let's look at this. Is this really who you are? Wow, that could have changed everything when I was parenting little kids, but
Right. Right.
yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And you can tell it took nothing from him to have, to talk to Metallica. I'm sure he was just as proud as Metallica as he was Beastie Boys or Adele. You know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
like, and yeah, because when you're, and I think that's what he said, is like, when you're in the creative process, when you allow yourself to be in creation, it feels good.
Yeah.
That feels better than even the result you get.
So
When
he
you
was
think about
talking
that.
about, yeah, we're just going to dive right in.
Yeah.
But he was talking about the energy of creation.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that it feels a lot like love when you're in
Yeah.
that, and it feels so good. And it's like this juicy feeling, and it's like a burning, like, I don't know how
Yeah.
you feel love. I would assume everyone kind of feels love. Maybe
Yeah.
they don't actually, now that I say that. But when you feel love, you know right away what you're feeling.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And can you imagine just being able to feel that on a regular basis in your job?
Mm-hmm.
Like that
Yeah.
is awesome. That would be addicting. Like you'd want to keep doing it, I would
Yeah.
think.
Well, and as a 2 Enneagram, when I am in stress, I can look to the 4 to pull myself back. And so one of the things that the 4 is gifted at is creating, is art, art and creation,
Yeah.
more creation. So I have done that plenty of times where I've said, I've been upset, and it's like, okay, I'll go and I'll design a post, like that's my art, right? Or I'll design a workbook, work on maybe a workbook that I've been doing and go to there. And it's like time can fly by and my back will hurt so bad because I've been sitting for 6 hours and I haven't even paid attention. I'm like, I have not even paid attention because it's just, I'm just
Wow.
in the flow. That's one of the best feelings, is like in the flow, and don't make me stop. I just want to keep going. And it feels so good. It feels so, so good. Love it.
Oh, that's awesome.
I love it. Well, the first half of the book is really woo. I feel like it's a lot of just woo. And then the second half is kind of practical. Like, if you're doing artist, try this. If you
Yeah.
do this, try that. And so, but one of the wooest things, if that's a word, we're making up woo words, but is he talks about, like, he's going along in the book, and then and if you don't catch it, you don't know, but all of a sudden you can tell he's in meditation. And I
Okay.
loved the way he described it. So I'm going to read what he said. He just starts saying, the sound of water churning in the distance is audible. I feel a breeze of what might be warm air, though it is difficult to tell since my arm hair senses the movement as cooling. 2 birds are singing, and with my eyes closed, I'm placing them approximately 50 paces behind me and to my right. Now a smaller bird, or at least one with a smaller and higher pitched chirp, enters the soundscape behind me to the left. From the rhythmic interplay, it seems clear the birds are not in conversation. Each sings its own song. I notice the sound of a passing vehicle, and in the distance, children's voices. A blur of a rhythmic music arrives from the far left. There's an itch on the left side of my face, just in front of my ear. A vehicle with a larger, heavier sound passes, and a bit of jazz music makes its appearance much closer to my position. Only now do I realize I turned it on earlier at a quiet volume, and it had been unaudible until this moment. Someone arrives, I open my eyes, and it all goes away. Like that's meditation to me, where you're just fully just letting it be. You literally, you're like, there's an itch right there. Okay, I'm gonna scratch it. Or like, I hear that sound. And you're just in this space of complete oneness with everything that's around you. Like that's the feel good meditation to me. I love it.
Yeah.
It's all of those things. And so, some types of meditation, you're trying to push those aside. And sometimes that's useful. And that builds a muscle of being able to push things aside. But I think there's also something to just really actually like focusing in on everything that is actually happening. It's a really powerful muscle that builds that inner presence, to know what's going on. Oh, my stomach's a little tight. Oh, I can hear that sound, just to get really, really tuned into what's really happening. I just love that explanation of meditation. That's it. Like, try it for 5 minutes. And I tell you, you walk away with just like the burst of energy and like this self-acceptance, I think, because you're part of everything. I think it's interesting. And he talks about like, doing something like meditation. Sometimes meditation's a hard word for people. We don't like it. But we can decide, he says, here's a few things. Listen to this. We can decide to take 3 slow, deep breaths upon awakening each morning. Like, if you just say, that's all I'm going to do. This is getting into this space of, it's not about, you're going to breathe those 3 breaths, whether you're there or not, right? Like, you're going to do that. But if you stop and do it, he
So
says,
is this like putting you in a place to receive creativity, or is this just being human, would you say?
I think being a human, but I think beginning to see yourself as a creative soul. This kind of things is what does it. So
Okay.
I mean, think about, this is our whole point of our Sunday reset, right? Is we're just going to take these, instead of just whatever comes at us, we're actually just going to do them with more intention. So he says, by doing those 3 breaths, we can, by that simple act, we can set a course to start each day still, centered, and in the moment. Another thing he says, we might also eat our meals mindfully, slowly savoring each bite with appreciation. He says, take a daily walk in nature, looking at everything entering our field of wisdom with gratitude and connection. He said, take a moment to marvel at the feeling of your heartbeat and the movement of blood through your veins before sleep. The purpose of such exercises is not necessarily in the doing, just as the goal of meditation isn't in the meditating. The purpose is to evolve the way we see the world when we are not engaged in these acts. So that's, again, when you're just sitting there, going about your day, you're not hearing the 2 different birds. You're not hearing the car pass. You are actually, that information is coming into your brain and filtering out.
Yeah.
But it's like, when you actually stop and listen to what's really, really going on, you build that muscle of presence. And because you're actually part of it, so yeah, we're not really, you're not driving the car, but now you're aware of it. You're connected to it somehow because you've stopped and paid attention to it. And that's really powerful, I think. And he says, to support our practice, we might set up a daily schedule where we engage in particular rituals at specific times every day or week. These gestures we perform don't need to be grand. Small rituals can make a big difference. So again, like with our Sunday reset, it's like, we go through that ritual is similar every week. But it really is a great place to say, okay, let's put our attention on the week ahead, not 3 weeks ahead, not next year, just the week ahead. What are we going to do here? What are we going to see, feel, things like that. It's really a practice, and it builds not just that muscle, but all the other muscles, right? So
I like that. I even think about like, you're really good at this, like a Friday date night. Like that is a ritual that is building connection, and you look forward to it. Like, I don't know.
It's so
You're right.
chill.
They are simple.
Yeah, they're so simple. Yeah, I mean, just the 3, just say, and that's the thing, find what feels easy. So it's like, I'm going to wake up every day and purposely take 3 breaths. just, I guarantee you that's going to add something to you. Like that's going to add, just by doing that, there's not something you're trying to gain. You're just going to take 3 deep breaths, or you're going to go for a walk, or any of those things. Sit and listen to your heartbeat. I'm telling you that the first time you're doing it, you're going to be like, am I doing it okay? Is this right? You know, it might take a few times before that chatter goes away a little bit, but pretty soon you'll learn to just be with what is and let yourself. And that's, to me, that's almost this idea of being an artist, is it's like, I'm just going to allow it to be, rather than figure out if it's right or not, because art isn't right. You know what I mean? Art, it depends. It's like the eye of the beholder, right? There is no hard, fast rules about this is pretty and this is ugly. You just can't do that when it comes to art. It depends.
Well, and I was thinking about too, I don't know where I heard it just recently and it brought it back to my mind, but when we were talking about Einstein time last month, or 2 months ago, actually, you know, there's Einstein and there's Newtonian, and the Newtonian, like there's rules there, it's regimented, it's set up, but artist that's not really how you become an artist, is by adhering to rigid rules and doing these things in a certain prescribed way, because that's what the rule is. It really is that Einstein idea of like, everything is relative. Everything is in relation to other things. And it's just like that meditation, like how it shows up, that car, how it showed up is only showing up for that person in that spot at that time, for no one else.
Right.
And it's special.
You can look at it. So yeah, beautiful. Yeah. There's another book. I can't recall the title right now, but it's this producer who produced all of Prince's music. And she talks about, I think it's called The Art of the Sound or something like that. Something, I don't know. Anyway, it's a really good book. If you are into music, you will love this book, because there's like a soundtrack that goes along with it. And she talks about different things. But one of the things that she talked about that I'm so glad I just thought of in this moment is the idea of, okay, think back when painters, before photography, a good painter was one that could make the person look real, right? That could make the person look real. And then all of a sudden a photography camera comes along and it does it with just, you know, it takes no time, right? It takes hardly any time to snap a picture. So all of a sudden what became special about this art now is just like, okay, whatever, right? And then she talked about how that happened in music, because they had what was called analog before digital. They had analog, and I didn't know this, but as they would record things, the sound producer would have to skew things to get them to sound correct as they're recording it, because in the process of recording, it skewed through the microphone feedback, or I don't even know, it was all sorts of different things.
Whoa.
But they got really good at counteracting that. And then digital music came in and they were like, what the heck? Like now we don't have, like my art is gone, right? Like now that doesn't matter. But then it becomes the new art was, you know, how to use the digital things. And she goes through these different sequences of the different times when art kind of had to be reimagined. It was a new way of art. In fact, I think I remember she saying that I think it was 2020, I think the book's pretty new, but it was like 2021. Anyway, it was one of Adele's songs. She was the only artist that recorded that year on the charts that didn't alter her voice in one way, or that there wasn't like a synthesized sound, or even like the instruments, right? It was just her and a piano and a guitar. And how that was so pure, and that's this art, but also so is the other art, how to put together, you know, you're just using a different form of, you know, of a palette to create with. And that was really, really fascinating. I never thought about that. Like, it's not that somebody painting. So what happened is, back to the art, what happened is then what happened in art is it became, you know, the Impressionists or the Picassos. Now we don't care. Yeah, we don't care about it looking so real. Now it opens up and the art becomes so abstract, because it just changes the whole genre. Because now that's not necessarily what we're looking for. It's just this true to life photo, you know, that somebody painted, which is why, like, the Mona Lisa is one of the most, because it's true. But from our perspective, we've had cameras our whole life, so it's like, okay, but like to them, they didn't have that kind of true photo, you know, of themselves. And so it would, like, I'm sure they would look at it and look at her and be like, oh my gosh, that's why it was so precious. It's because it was so well done. Um, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, but you know, I mean, that idea of, you know, when things shift, to find a new way of art, what's the new way of doing it to catch that a seed, like we talked about in the other one.
So
And
art is always possible. No
always
matter
possible.
what is shifting,
Mm-hmm.
think that a certain art is going to die, but
Mm-hmm.
it just opens up a new way for another art. And the other one doesn't even die.
Yep.
Like it's still there.
I remember seeing or watching a TED Talk one time, and the guy said, look, you know, for this period of time, humanity, you know, they were working to like survive. And then we had like built a tractor. And so then they could actually have the tractor do some of the work. And then we kind of got culinary. We could actually take the food and actually make it, you know, yummy. And then once we got the like a stove that you didn't have to put wood in, and it just kind of went forward. And he says, you know, we're at this age where people are nervous about technology. But he says he really predicts is that what we'll do is we will start to appreciate artistic things because we'll have automated all the things that are work so that our attention can go to art, you know, whether any kind of art, you know, whatever that looks like. And I was like, I wonder if that's true.
Yeah, as as AI is becoming really big, is it a commercial? Maybe you'll recognize this, but it was like, let's let AI do the mundane things. Let's let it do the dishes. Let's let it do those things, and let's save the time and effort for the creative things. Like let's let us still.
Yes, I love it. And speaking of your time, I wrote down this quote and I listened to it over and over again, and it's so short, but it says, listen to this quote in this book. So thinking about time, we think of time passing and the importance of time, and I've got to be there in 10 minutes and things like that. But think about that Einstein time. What if you cherished time because, quote, time is where learning occurs, unlearning as well. Like that blows my mind because that is true, the ultimate teller of time. To say I used to be there and I've now, you know, evolved to here. That's what time is valuable for. Like it shows where I've come from. And to start to get into that Einstein time of like looking at it that way instead of like, I'm going to be late. I've only got an hour. It's like I'm not going to look at time that way anymore. I'm going to allow myself to create time, you know. And I know that's like really woo-woo, and that's why we're doing the woo-woo. But it's like even this weekend. So this is how it works. So this weekend we were able to meet up together, and we don't get to do that very often because we live a couple hours apart. But I was kind of going, and I have this idea of, you know, like I got to leave at this time, whatever. And, you know, normally I just automatically get ready. I don't know. It's kind of a strange thing. I've got a teeny bit of that Einstein time.
Love it.
And so I got in the car and I was like, I started to Marco Polo. You're like, hey, I'm running behind. And as soon as I start Marco Polo and you text me, you're like, look, we're running behind. And I'm like, perfect. I mean, and that's how it shows up. There's not a hierarchy with time. There's not a judgment with time. It's like moving outside of that. And really bending those rules because time is different here than on the top of the mountain. We talked about this on the woo of that. It's like, if we can really let go of the rigidity of time. But I loved that quote. To me, time is where learning occurs, unlearning as well. That's it. Like, oh, that's like poetry to me. I love it.
You could meditate on that for a little bit.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Totally.
I love that. Okay, so there was one part in the chapter, The Unseen, which, hello, isn't that woo? Like,
yeah,
that's the name of that.
Yes.
And he talked about how he was really talking about spirituality, but I loved this quote in here. And he said, the spiritual world provides a sense of wonder and a degree of open-mindedness not always found within the confines of science. The world of reason can be narrow and filled with dead ends. While a spiritual viewpoint is limitless and invites fantastic possibilities. The unseen world is boundless. And I just think, think about all the things that people thought never would be real. And I don't know why I always go to the airplane, but people are like, there's no way that
people can fly.
Be able to make a machine that will fly, let alone carry people, let alone carry hundreds of people. Like, that's crazy.
Right.
And, I can imagine thinking that. And I even think about now, my kids were like, I wonder if one day we're going to have self-drive cars. And I'm like, I've wanted that my whole life, to just sit in the car, read a book and let the car do the driving. And it seems so unreal. Like, I don't even think it belongs, but like it's
happening
in the spiritual viewpoint, like it's boundless. Like it can happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fun to think about stuff like that. And what was it? I think I've talked about this before, but it was Lewis Carroll, the writer of Alice in Wonderland, that said, sometimes I just like to sit and think of all the possibilities.
I love it.
Yeah.
I
Or
love it.
either the possibilities or impossible. No, he said impossible things is what he said.
Ooh, yeah,
Which is
yeah.
even cooler, right? All the impossible things.
Well, and think about this. Okay, so what happens is think about 300 years ago, and you ask somebody, will people ever fly? And they're like, no. Now they're picturing somebody like
Oh, yeah.
flying, right? But today, if you ask somebody, can people fly? Well, they can get into a machine into it. You know what I mean? Like sometimes the answers to those impossibilities aren't exactly what we think,
Oh, yeah.
but they are. So think about this. Can we back to the time? Can we control time? Can we speed up time, or can we go back in time? And you'd be like, no, that can't happen. But think about this. Again, 200 years ago, to make dinner took time, right?
Yeah.
And today, let's say it takes us way less time to make dinner. Is that a manipulation of time? Have we sped up time? Yeah, not the way that you would imagine it, but yeah, we have a lot more time, right? Or so we
Do you
think
even
about
think
things.
like watching a video of your past could be like
Yes,
traveling back in time? Like,
right. Eating that meal that brings back those memories is like traveling back in time. So it's
yeah.
like the idea in looking at those impossibilities is really thinking not only on that you think it's impossible, but how could that show up, right? How can that be different? Those are endless. Those
Right.
ideas are endless. We don't know how that's going to, but the airplane's the perfect example. Like they'd be like, no. And we'd be like, well, that is kind of a thing. Or remember watching the Jetsons and they would see each other on the phone. And we were like, that's so cool. Like it was a little before my time, but I knew it.
But still,
And
it didn't exist when we were kids and
no, it
watching.
did not exist. Yeah. Not exist. And now here we are looking at each other as we talk, and I remember thinking, there's no, like, how will that happen? That'll be so cool. And then guess what? It was cool for 20 minutes. And then it was just normal. Right. And then it was just normal. And so that's kind of what that stopping and looking at it does, is it takes us back to that, ooh, that awe,
Yeah,
because we do get used to stuff very quickly.
that's
Humans do.
true.
And
That
so
is,
when we slow down and we're like, there's a bird chirping. Oh, interesting. I didn't hear that bird. Then, you start to feel that awe and wonder, and it feels so good. That's what we're looking for.
yeah.
But you brought up the whole idea of spirituality, and I thought it was interesting because he took time to really talk about spirituality, and I loved what he had to say about it. He says the act of creation is an attempt to enter a mysterious realm, a longing to transcend. What we create allows us to share glimpses of an inner landscape, one that is beyond our understanding. Art is our portal to the unseen world. Without the spiritual component, the artist's work with a crucial disadvantage. The spirit world provides a sense of wonder and a degree of open-mindedness not always found within the confines of science. This is what you said. And the world,
Spirit world.
yeah,
A spirit world?
right?
Like, that's amazing because you even think about if time doesn't exist, all the art's already been created and not created, right?
Right.
I mean,
But I think
that's
that,
really cool.
so talk about the woo. I think we've talked a little bit about that Akashic
Akashic
records.
record. Yeah.
I mean, that's that idea, is it's like if time doesn't exist, then and there's some kind of a place where we can go and research, in the future or in the past. It's like it's all written in one book of life kind of a thing, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the idea. And but I thought it was interesting. He said the word spirituality may not speak to those who dwell chiefly in the intellect, or those who equate the word with organized religion. If you prefer to think of spirituality as simply believing in connection, that's fine. If you choose to think of it as believing in magic, that's fine too. The things we believe carry a charge, regardless of whether they can be proven or not. The practice of spirituality is a way of looking at the world where you're not alone. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even like I said, the ideas are, the idea is a buddy. The creation's a buddy. That spark of creation.
So I remember going to the Masonic temple And one of the qualifications is you have to be a man. The other one was that you have to believe in a higher power. You have to have spirituality. And the reason he gave for that was that because how can you make a promise without knowing that there's going to be something binding you to that promise? But outside of making promises and all of that stuff, like it really does, when you believe in a higher power, whatever that is, if it's magic, if it's the universe, if it is a god or whatever, a goddess, like it is opening you up to seeing the world differently and showing up differently. Do you agree?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's the thing. If you get stuck on the vocabulary word, whether you're going to call it God, goddess, magic, you know what I mean? Like you can get stuck on that word.
Yeah.
But the experience of it is what he's trying to open up for you is like, let's move beyond the word and experience spirituality. That's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
And we want to label it and we want to hierarch it because we're human. And so we can kind of like pat that on the head and say, you cute little thing. I know you want to put this in an organized box a little bit, but the possibilities and the impossibilities are so big.
Yeah.
We can't put them in a category. Like there just isn't, that's just not even the when you're in that awe and that wonder space, that's just not even an inclination.
Right.
Categorize it to think, is this good or bad? You're just in that feeling of that love, like you talked about before.
Right. Cool. I love that.
Yeah. So then he talked about this, I had a chapter on harmony, and harmony was my word a couple of years ago, remember?
Oh,
And
yeah.
so it stuck out to me because I learned so many lessons. It was on my phone. So every time there was on the lock phone, I saw harmony for an entire year.
Cool.
And
Smart.
so it was always just something that, was just something I played. I really played with it. I didn't sit and stare at it all the time, but it was amazing how things came up that year. And I've talked about it before, but one of the things that came up very quickly was the idea of, that the whole idea of the harmony is that you have more than one note, and so if I was going to play like if I wanted to sing like everyone else, okay, but to have a harmony, I've got to be in a different, I got to be on my own note in order to create a harmony. And that was one of the lessons. So I love that word. And he says, the invisible threads of mathematics are laced through all natural beauty. We can find the same ratios at work in the spirals of the seashells, galaxies, inner flower petals, DNA molecules, hurricanes, and the design of the human face. And this is called the golden ratio. Do you know anything about the golden ratio?
How do you?
Well, I looked it up. I mean, I knew about it. So if you go, I really encourage you to Google it because you'll see the like symbol of it. So it's almost like a spiral. What's fascinating is that the equations are both the circular and the straight. So it represents sometimes male and female. It's like women are more flowy and circularly and able to do that. And men, it's the same ratios, but yet they both can exist at the same time. And what it is, the golden ratio is approximately 1.6180339887. That's the ratio. And it is derived from the Fibonacci sequence, which you'll see the picture if you do that, which what that means is, so 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, where each number is the sum of the two preceding ones. So they use this in art, or in architecture to create a sequence. And they said it shows up, of course, in nature. Again, like he says, in the spiral of the shells, it's that circular thing in the sunflower seeds, in the head of the sunflower. Hurricanes have that same spiral, and even the proportions of the human body follow this golden ratio. Like it's just one of those golden ratios. And so the famous works of art, Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man is based on this. The Parthenon in Greece was supposedly using the golden ratio for harmony and balance. And some composers like Debussy and Beethoven structured their compositions in ways that aligned with this ratio. And then in logos like Apple and Twitter, photography and even web designs use this ratio to lay out visually pleasing kind of things. So look it up and see what it is. But it's like this way of like for every, so it's like if you were going to go here for 1, here for 1, here for 2, here for 3, you're going to follow that sequence of every 2 numbers. So 0 plus 1 is 1. 1 plus, so there's 0, 1, and then 1, and then 2, because it's 1, 1 plus 2, and then 2 plus 3 equals 5, and then 5 plus 3. So it's the last 2 numbers just added together is the next sequence that you would create. And it's just very pleasing and natural way that the earth or the nature is kind of conducted. You know how so you've seen those things where like the lungs look like the tree roots, you know, things like that. The atom, you know, the tiniest form of an atom is really like it's like a solar system. You know, you've got the one in the charge in
Oh
the
yeah.
middle and circling around. It's like the macro and the micro, or just similar but different sizes. You can really get into the woo on that, but it's kind of cool stuff. Really cool stuff.
That is cool. I wonder, like, did Bach know about the Fibonacci sequence, or was he just operating in a really cool zone of creation that just felt familiar?
Well, I mean,
You
and then you
know?
get it, yeah, and then you get into the idea that he was deaf, you know, as it
True.
gets stuff later. I mean, like, so this is where you go, only some kind of a spiritual idea can make that work. Do you know what I mean? If you're trying
Beautiful
to like,
whispers. Yeah.
yeah, it has to be some kind of a spiritual experience or that unseen or magic, right? Or whatever the words you wanted to say, that connectedness. That's the only way you can make sense of that with how he was able to do that, because he wasn't doing math, I
You
don't
know,
think.
and yeah, later on it says that we don't need to understand math to create work from these vibrations. So I guess he answered my question. But like there's a natural intuitive sense to the mathematics.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's really cool to think about that it's almost intuitive.
Yeah,
An intuitive desire to create pleasing things like that.
yeah. And I go
So,
back to even like you're in the last other episode about the introduction when you talked about the different levels of play. Like, so I'm assuming this is stages of development almost for little kids. They go through this kind of, that's what I
mm,
imagined is this kind of play. Nope, there's not like a cutoff mark. Okay, you're 8 months. Now you move into the other,
right.
it's like this natural moving towards the next level. And I think as little kids, that's all we did, right? We were totally right brained for 3 years. We were
Yeah.
totally right brained for 3 years. We didn't have the capacity to, it was just like, I'm hungry. I'm going to cry. I'm not judging if I should or not.
Right. I don't know
I'm
that I did it
hungry.
an hour ago. Like I'm
Right.
hungry.
I don't care. Right. There's a zero, like supposed to in for little kids. And and I think we kind of get that taken out way too much. I think we definitely need our left brain. Um, but maybe we've gone a little too far. It's something to think. And that's why I thought this book was so good, because it does kind of build that muscle of that right side of the brain that just doesn't need it to be good or bad or right or wrong or pretty or ugly. It just needs to create. It's just doing its thing. Like I've said this a million times. You go into the room of little kids and say, who can color? Everybody will, who can draw? Everybody raises their hand because they don't have that comparison. But you go into an adults, maybe 2 or 3 would raise their hand because we've left brained it and decided this is better, and what would it be like if we didn't live in that world?
Right. What if we could be all things whenever we wanted?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And here's the quote I told my kids a million times. You only have to persuade one person,
Hmm. Yourself.
yourself. That's it. You know what I mean? So if I look good today, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. It only matters what I think. Once I feel that way, I go out in the world and I guarantee you, I receive the feedback I want to reinforce. That's another thing. We use our humanness to
Really
our
cool.
example. We will look for things to reinforce our biases. That's how it is. So why not create a positive bias and get that feedback back? But like you only have to convince one person. That's it. That's it.
Ah, that's really powerful. Thank you for that.
Mm,
Yeah. I'm gonna tell myself that every day.
right? Right.
Yeah. Put that on my mirror.
Right. Yep.
Wow.
I know, right? You only have to
Thank
convince one
you.
person.
Well, and
Yep.
as we talk about ourselves, like let's go into when he talked about the prism of self.
Yeah.
I thought it was so cool to think about that. And remember Pollyanna and the prisms? You remember that?
In the movie Pollyanna?
Yeah.
I haven't seen that in so long. No. What was it? Because she had it in her window?
So, yeah, so that sick lady had him in her window, and it became kind of like this emblem for beauty for Pollyanna. And
Mm,
I remember like that being the first time that I kind of realize what a prism was or saw them
Mhm.
as magical, and having these capabilities to show us different things. And what he was talking about is that we all have these different parts of ourselves that will show up differently in the creative acts that we do. So sometimes it will show this part, but it's like a prism, and depending on how you hold it up to the light, how high or low it is going to reflect something totally different. And we all have those different aspects of ourselves. And what a beautiful idea is we're not just one thing. I was
Mhm.
talking to a friend yesterday, and he was saying how he wanted to be an artist, but then he got embarrassed about his art. And so he decided to play basketball instead.
Mm.
And he's like, well, it's such a good thing for me because I learned all these other things. And I was like, yeah, but also you were an artist, like
Mhm.
maybe more in that you had to put that part aside because you had to fill this other part.
Right.
But both of those could have existed at the same time. And
Right.
they did. He just didn't express one of them for a little while, but
Mhm.
like we decide that we need to be this certain way,
Mhm.
but the prism of ourselves, we're all the ways. And we probably
Yeah.
have the ability to be all the ways.
Yeah, I love that. And that's the thing is so much of us wants to say like that's a human thing too. It's like this thing happened, I let go of this dream, but it's better because this and this and this and this. And it's like that's true. And you can miss that you weren't the artist too. Like they don't have to cancel each other out. And we kind of think we kind of act like we kind of have to. And
Yeah.
so yeah, the prism. So I have a prism here. I have a couple stories about prisms and fractals, but it's true. I mean, it's this clear glass, but you put light into it, and it's like all the colors of the rainbow show up, right? So, and this is within us. And I bought this. It's interesting. So we were doing some live classes, and it was the first one I'd done. It was like we called them a retreat, and so it was an all-day class, and we were recording these classes. We had different experts come once a month, and it was my turn, and we had done it January, February, March, April, and I was May. And it was the first time I had really put any of my teachings out there, I guess you could say. And so when it came to, selling tickets, I think two people bought tickets, like two people, like we were giving them away.
That
It was
beginning
like,
is so hard.
yeah, it was so hard. And so all the feels that came with that, like, oh, I could go there right now. All the feels of all that happened and not in, the feelings of rejection or the failure or the insecurity or the maybe this is what I wasn't supposed to be, but I'd happened to be out like couple days before, and I bought myself this prism, and I just took it with me. And as we were kind of getting ready to go on, we were kind of huddled behind, and we were sitting there, and she says, "Be a prism." And I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like I just bought," and I had it with me. I'm like, "I bought this 2 days ago." So it was like, let me be this place. I'm being willing to just be this plain cut glass and let the art reflect out what people need. You know what I mean? I'm going to let them receive where they're at, that they're going to receive what they need, because all of me is contained in the prism. So I'm just going to be the prism, not everything to everyone, just myself, and they're going to pick up the reflection that they need. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I
And I think
keep
that's
this
how we experience art too, right? We take
totally
in what we need from it, and we might not need something from a certain
right.
artist. Or did you ever watch This Is Us?
A little, yes, I watched a couple of seasons. Yeah.
You remember when she was at that painting and she just stood and stared at that painting? Like there
No,
was
I
something
missed
to
it.
receive from it. Like she was there all day long, and there was something that she needed from that at that exact moment in her life. And
Mm,
I've never really had an experience like that, probably with music. I remember the first time I heard Popular from Wicked, and this was when the musical had come out originally.
yeah.
And it spoke to my soul. I don't
Right.
even know why, because I was not a popular person.
Right.
But I think just the combination of notes, the energy, whatever it
Yes.
was in the music, like I could have just listened to it over and on
Yeah.
repeat,
Hmm.
and it never got sick of it. There are moments like that we have when it just hits us at the right moment, at the right
Hmm.
time, and we're ready
Right.
to receive it.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example. Like it wasn't the message of the words. It was spiritual. It was beyond that. It was that and more. It was so much that we can't really put it into a little box and tie a bow on it and say this is what it was. Like it was unspeakable almost.
Yeah.
And that's what spirituality is all about. That's what we're looking for.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Fred Warner, linebacker for the San Francisco 49ers. Abercrombie has the new suits you need, plus all the collared shirts to go with them. The Abercrombie & Fitch Collins suit is the only suit you'll ever need for any occasion. Available in slim, classic, and athletic. Pair with a collared classic. Go with a soft, easy-to-wear sweater polo or a comfortable long-sleeve shirt. With so many different fits and fabrics, you can make a look that's completely your own. Add the Abercrombie & Fitch Collins suit and new collared shirts to every occasion this season. Shop online or in store.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's tax season, and we're all a bit tired of numbers. But here's one you need to hear. $16.5 billion. That's how much the IRS flagged for possible identity fraud last year. Now here's a good number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it. Guaranteed. Save up to 40% your first year at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Hi, this is Javon, your Blinds.com design consultant.
Oh, wow. A real person.
Yep. I'm here to help with everything from selecting the perfect window treatments to...
Well, I've got a complicated project.
No problem. I can even help schedule a professional measure and install. We can also send you samples fast and free.
I just might have to do more.
Whatever you need.
So the first room we're looking at is for...
Shop Blinds.com now and save up to 45% site-wide. Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Yeah. So what was remember your fractal story? What was...
So when I was about, I think I must have been between probably 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe 11 at the most. I don't know, but there was this store and where I grew up, this little store, and there was like the parking lot, and then there was not really a curb. It was just like the cement started to go into the store. And so you weren't really supposed to park there, but my mom had parked there because she ran into the store. So I remember sitting in there, it was nighttime. I remember sitting there and my mind just started to wander. But again, I mean, I wasn't even close to driving. So, I mean, I think 11 would be the oldest, but I feel like it was almost more 9, something like that. And my mind just kind of wandered and I just imagined as if I had been in this previous life. And I remember thinking, what will it be like when I'm there reflecting back? And all of a sudden I was in that future time. It was like this future moment. I was connected to this time before, right? Noticing, what life would be like. And then all of a sudden I just, see here, it's hard to put it into words, but I saw just this box. And the idea that came was, it was like, don't get stuck on this box. And the idea that it all of a sudden it moved into this cube, and it was like, what reality is, what truth is, it won't be unfamiliar, but don't get stuck on the box because there's a whole bunch of depth to it. You know what I mean? Like it's so much more than what you're going to learn here. And, that was just always something I thought about. And it wasn't until I was in my 40s that I think, oh, I don't know if little 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds were having those kinds of things. But it had influenced me all the time. I always kept that in my awareness. And then as I stepped into this work, even I, thought, when I realized that, I'm like, oh, wow, maybe that doesn't happen to everybody. Maybe that was something special. And as I kind of looked at it again, it was almost as if that cube, if you think about it, each of those sides of that cube, it doesn't matter how thin they are, it's its own cube, like it's its own little piece of, like, even this piece of paper it's not nothing on the side, so if I put these papers together and create a cube, it's like they're each their own component. And I thought, oh, that's fascinating. And then a few maybe years later, I looked at it again, and I had been compelled to watch this documentary about fractals. And a fractal, if you don't know what it is, look it up, but it's these shapes and images. A lot of times nature is created in fractals, but it's like the whole is created by a whole bunch of small versions of the whole. So again, like the atom and the solar system, it's like they're similar. And so I have a graphic. So it was like, I should probably post it, but it's like you take the square and then you create like the cube, and think of it as like the lines, right? Like when you're in drawing a cube and like art, so you see through it, right? And then all of a sudden there's different squares, like one of the squares makes up that little square. And it was all of a sudden it was like, oh my gosh, actually that one square is really important, but it's not all of it, because everything that's bigger, it makes up the squares, all the bigger. I feel like I have it. Let me see if I can, where'd that be? Hold on. I have a picture. I feel like I keep it. Is it in here? If I don't find it right away, I have it might be here. Let's see. I don't know if I have it in here or not, but I had to draw it. I had to draw it one day. Here, I'll sit down. I had to draw it one day just to kind of get it out. So I know I have it in somewhere.
You could just say you're going to post it when you find it. Great interest. People show up every day to find it.
Yeah. I will post the picture of the idea of this, how it turned into a fractal, how one square became, how it moves into smaller, and it's hard to explain just in words. And that's part of like what the lesson was, right? Like that was part of the lesson. It was like, there's so much more than these lines.
I think that totally extends to creativity. It just makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense. I'm not trying to left brain it, but
no, you're good.
I guess there's parts of both that you can understand, but we're so much more than just what you see.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that,
mm-hmm.
but we're so much more than what we think. We're so much more than how we show up in physical form.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many pieces, and the artist and the art, I think could definitely be described that way.
Well, and I love what you're saying is sometimes, we could be different, and that's the whole point. We get to choose. Which, like, I'm gonna express myself today as this big, huge square, and on another day, I'm gonna express myself as just one of the small squares that make up the squares. When we open up to all the possibilities, then that's when we get free choice. We really get to choose. And part of that choice, another level of that choice is letting that be okay. Right.
Letting the small and the big be the same.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yep. Yeah. They're both vital to the whole thing.
Yeah.
If you take out the small one, it all falls apart. Yeah. Like it's all not all connected. So yeah, that's the true essence of agency, is in that creativity of being all the pieces and picking the one you want and expressing it. So
yeah. I have one other thought that I was thinking about, and he was talking about, let me just see what page it's on. It was called adaptation, and it was kind of talking about practice. So, I mean, you could say practice is being the big square one day and being the small square the other day.
Right. I love it.
But like when we're practicing, when we're doing those things, or maybe even doing something creative every day, we're practicing and we're showing up and using our skills of creation. But he talked about a concept that, like in exercising, and I remember in health class they would talk about spot training, how spot training is a myth. And I remember being so confused because I'm like, if you do sit-ups, your stomach is going to get stronger.
Right.
It is. So it's not telling us that, but what it's telling us is the stomach is going to get stronger, and your hips are going to get stronger.
Yeah.
And your thighs are probably going to get stronger because you're having to, use those as a lever or whatever.
Your back. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And so he was talking about when we are creative and we're practicing these things, that a lot of your other skills are going to increase as well, which I love that idea, because there are so many things I'm interested in. I want to knit, and I want to sew, and I want to do all of these things. And so the idea that when I'm doing a project for, knitting a stuffed animal,
Yes.
That it's not in isolation to all my other creative habits, that those other things are being amplified as well, just because I'm in the act of creation. Do you think that's true?
It has to be. Yes.
Okay.
I think so. I think so too. I think so.
Which makes me so happy, because it's hard to pick sometimes. Do you feel that way? Like,
yeah,
in the world of the things that we could do, I'm like, I don't know what to pick.
Totally. But even that picking is art. Like,
yeah,
that's the idea of the book. The woo-wooist idea of this book is that everything is art. You are the art and the artist, like, that's it.
Yeah. That's cool. That's a prism.
That's a prism. Yeah, totally.
When most people are asked what they want, they will answer, I want to be happy. But happy takes practice. And that's what the Wholeness Library is all about. So check it out free at thewholenessnetwork.com.